Your wonderful Nikon D4 of course has a dedicated bracketing button, and it sits here top left on your camera. If you push that one, you see it changes the content of the top LCD. And there are two selections you need to make. One is how many shots you want to include in the bracketing. You can see here it says 5, and that means it takes 5 shots, 3, and then if you set it to 0, you have actually turned the bracketing off. It shows in graphics here the shots. You can see now it's showing you 3 bars here. In this case, a normally exposed in the middle and then one over and underexposed to each side. If I go to 5, you can see it shows me 5 bars now. You select the so-called increments on the front command dial, and as you can see here, it can deviate from the normally exposed image by 0.3 stops here, 0.7, 1 stop, and so on. And it shows you can see here, the graphics also shows you how close the images are to each other in terms of the exposure. Instead of going to the right and getting 5 images here or 3 images, you can go to the left, and in that case the camera will start to give you images that are exposed only to one side of the normally exposed. So here you can see you get one that's normally exposed and one that's underexposed. Here I get one that's normally exposed and one overexposed. Here I get 3, where 2 of them are underexposed, 3, 2 of them are overexposed, and that's basically how it works. If you want to, you can see exactly the same information on the rear LCD. You just have to press the bracketing button as I do now, and then you can see exactly the same happening. It shows you different options of bracketing. So in order not to hit the shutter 5 times, I normally put my camera in one of the continuous mode, continuous low or continuous high, and thereby you can hear it gets the job done in one go. I just have to push the shutter once. Of course, also you need to be in a exposure mode where the camera has some options for changing the exposure. So aperture works, shutter priority works, program works obviously, and in manual mode you need to make sure you have auto ISO on, otherwise there's very little for the camera to vary. The reason why you want to do exposure bracketing is that a scene can have a very big dynamic range, where you have something that's very, very dark over here and something that's very, very bright over here. And your human eye is amazing. It can see something like 20 stops of light at the same time. So you can see into the shadows and make distinctions here, and you can see into the bright parts and make distinctions here. But your Nikon D4 only in quotes, covers around 12 to 13 stops. So in order for you to cover a scene where there's an awful lot of dynamic range, you can combine, say, 3 images like this, provided of course that you get the right distance in terms of exposure between the 3 images here. You can build an image by combining 3 images that cover different aspects of the exposure. And of course you can cover this range with more images. You can see here in this example, I have the image here in the middle, and then I have 3 overexposed and 3 underexposed on each side of the 2 to cover the range here. If you hit the menu button and go to the 3rd item on the left here, the pension menu, also known as the custom setting menu, number E, submenu number E here, has the bracketing flash configuration. And if you go in here, you can see that there are a few options for using bracketing. So E6 is that you can bracket for a number of different things. In this video, I'm only talking about this option where you bracket for exposure, but be mindful that you can use flash and you can also bracket for white balance. But for now, I will just step out of this one and only use exposure. Another thing you can set up here is when you're shooting in manual mode, there are some options here, and I must admit I never use this. It's a bit too advanced for me, but just know that it's there, so you have different options when shooting in manual mode. Finally, there is the bracketing order, where you can control in which order the bracketing is done. I must admit I don't use this. I think Lightroom that I use to merge the images really doesn't care about the order here. And speaking of Lightroom, let me show you an example of how to merge the images in Lightroom, and that's basically it. So here in Lightroom I have an example of an exposure bracketing where I have done 5 images. The first one is normally exposed, as you can see down here. The second one is underexposed by 2 stops, third one by 1 stop, and then the other way for the last 2, 1 stop overexposed and 2 stops overexposed. I shot at, you can see here 5.6, the 85mm portrait lens with my happy assistant. And the idea was, just to illustrate here, to find something where, maybe it's not a very good example, but in here, in the cave built, it should be a little bit difficult to see what the text says, and maybe over here we could have some blown out highlights. So with that, let's see how the Lightroom will deal with this and merge these 5 images into one. So I just go to Photo, Photo Merge, and then HDR. And let's see how that goes. You can see here top right, it tells me when the images have been merged, how many of them it was able to use. And here it can tell me that all of them have been successfully merged. And you can see here it has done auto alignment and also used auto settings. So let's just merge these and see what it looks like. For reasons beyond me, Lightroom puts the image in the middle of the series here, but you can, if you go into develop mode, you can see that it's called something with HDR in the file name all of a sudden. So let's compare the two here, the HDR image and then the original. As you can see already now, it looks to me like the background is a little bit more bright. But also if you go in and look at the details here, you can see that the HDR, it looks like it has more detail in the highlights. Also in here in the dark part of the image, there is a difference, although not as much as I had expected. But it looks like the HDR has a little bit more light in here in the dark part of the image. So there you have it. I hope this was useful. As always, happy shooting. Take care. Bye-bye.